All right, next question from Gratitude. What test would show if the extra weight is a metabolic issue rather than just glycogen/water storage? Then what to do to correct the metabolic issue? Thank you. So this must have been an episode where we were discussing maybe water weight being gained after low carb or just weight loss in general or something like that. But part of the reason why I wanted to bring up this question is because we've pointed to increases in water and glycogen being something that can account for some weight gain when you're coming from a low calorie or low carb diet, keto, carnivore, all those things. But I want to be clear that that's only going to be a few pounds, maybe up to about 5 pounds or so, depending on your body size. This is not something that's accounting for 10, 15, 20, 25 pounds of weight. That's not glycogen. That's not water. It can be swelling. I mean, it could be water, but just not water in the muscles. It could be swelling and inflammation. It could be body fat. It could be food weight and other things too. But at that point, you're probably gaining a decent amount of body fat. And so I wouldn't want to just blame that all on glycogen or water storage. One of the ways you can tell is, if it's done slowly, it's hard to tell, right? If this is something that's accumulating over several days, it might be hard to tell. But normally the glycogen and water weight is something that will come on quickly. And so if you're gaining a couple pounds overnight, 2, 3, 4, 5 pounds in a couple of days, that's not body fat. That's most likely to be water weight, food weight, maybe some glycogen storage as well. So the speed with which it's coming on will probably be the best indicator if you're not like doing some body fat testing or you can't tell based on just like looking at your body. So that's going to be, from my view, the clearest indicator. But if you're continuing to gain, especially at a slower or steadier rate, then I would be considering some metabolic factors. And as far as what to do to correct that metabolic issue, it depends on what the metabolic issue is. This is something I would go back to the weight loss series, which was started with episode 10. And then, so it was 10, 11, 12. And then we did another episode on weight loss. I think it was like somewhere 37, 38 about the physiology of fat loss. I'll include all those in the show notes, but there's a lot of factors that can cause weight loss. If it was as simple as just here's how you fix the metabolic issue, then it would be really easy and simple, and there wouldn't be much to discuss. But everything from PUFA to gut issues, nutrient deficiencies, other aspects of lifestyle, poor sleep, excess stress, not enough movement, and on from there. There's also just hypothyroidism over time, is severely depressed metabolism, which especially can happen if you're coming from a hypocaloric diet or a hypocarbohydrate diet. So yeah, a lot of things to consider there. I would look back at those weight loss episodes as far as correcting the metabolic issue.
Yeah. I don't think so. There is tests you can do to see. So you can do like a hydrostatic weighing or any of those types of body fat percentage or body composition tests. And then they have like the bioelectrical impedance stuff. But I don't think that's like...
You would have to do it like before and after.
Yeah, and you'd have to do it with a lab. It's not like they have the scales that you can do at home. I don't know how accurate those are compared to like actually going to the lab. And there's one of the things called a bod pod, which we talked about that we had done. But I don't think it's necessary to go that route, kind of as you were implying, Jay. It's like if you're gaining like 5 pounds, 10 pounds in the beginning, that's kind of normal over a period of time. But if, especially coming from like very low carb and being the way you describe it in like the bodybuilding sphere is like being flat. So your muscles are flat. They're kind of lower on glycogen. But after that, if you're still gaining, then I don't think you need to have a test to determine that that's not necessarily glycogen and water weight. You're probably gaining body fat. And then in that situation, I would start to look at what's going on with your diet. Because I don't think like coming out the gate of low carb and keto and carnivore, if you're going to start eating fruit and like fruit smoothies and juice and things like that you should be putting on like tons and tons of body weight unless you have like something more specific going on. What that could be is dependent upon the individual. But if you're going to come out the gate and you're starting to incorporate heavy amounts of dairy and ice cream and like sugared milk and all that type of stuff, and you're gaining weight, then I think that like it's most likely diet related. And it's not that those foods are bad for you per se. It's just that they have a tendency to put weight on people, especially coming out of that low carb, carnivore, keto period. And that was something that I noticed, and that's something that I see with like quite a few different people, like a lot of clients that I work with. So I would really start to take a look at your diet. There's this perspective in the sphere that I'm not a huge fan of, where it's like this all in, like you just need to keep eating and your metabolic rate will eventually catch up and then you'll start to lose weight. I have never seen that be the case, in the sense that you just, like, if you're gaining weight and you just keep eating and keep eating more and keep eating more, and then the weight just all of a sudden starts to come off. Most times people that I work with that follow that approach will gain the weight, keep gaining the weight, and then at the back end be like, why am I gaining weight? My metabolism should be increasing. It's no, you need to adjust the foods that you're eating. It's like your metabolism doesn't endlessly increase for the amount of food that you're eating. Now, to be fair, there is nuance here where if you're coming out of some of those periods or you're severely underweight and whatnot, there may be a period of time where you overshoot with weight and you have to eat in excess of calories, and then things can resettle. But I would say that that's not necessarily the rule. I think that's the exception. So I would be very careful with those situations, and I would start to adjust and look at your diet and what you have going on. Overall, I don't think there's like an endless capability to keep eating and your metabolism just increases and then you're super skinny or you start to lose that body fat. So I think I'd be careful with those perspectives because they can be a bit dangerous, and I've seen it dangerous from a weight perspective. Then I've seen that with quite a few clients.
Yeah, and I would say that's especially true for the population that's already not lean coming in. So if you were already doing all your dieting and you're not lean, and then you go into a refeeding and then you just expect that the weight's going to probably come down after it goes up for a little while, normally I would agree. I don't see that being the case. And you have to look at, or it's best to, then look at what kind of foods are you eating, what other problems are there, what kind of holes are there to fill, where might we be taking some missteps. Normally I would say you don't want to be like 10 to 15 pounds being gained is pretty normal, maybe even 10 to 20, depending on where you're coming from and what it's like. And so I wouldn't necessarily look at that as a problem if you're feeling better and having a ton of benefits up to that point. But, and 10 to 15 if you're slightly smaller body size, and maybe a little bit more if you're larger. But normally it is a situation where other things need to be addressed in order to see the weight loss. And the reason why I'm saying it that way is because for us, for example, who are people who are coming into pro-metabolic with issues, but being generally lean and pretty muscular, we gained weight initially. We basically had a massive refeeding period, and then gained some weight. We did make some adjustments, but then the weight came down, and it wasn't because we were just eating less. Like, we were still eating a lot when our weight was coming down and we were leaning out. And there was intricacies there. We did make some shifts as far as the foods that were coming in. Initially, we were much higher on the starch because we were very afraid of fructose, understandably so, coming from the low carb space, as many people are. And so that was part of it as well, and some gut issues and things. But I would say for the large part, I think for us, it was one of those things where it was largely kind of a refeeding and recalibrating, and then it, and our weight jumped up 20, 25 pounds or so and then came back down.
But it was necessary. The weight gain for us was necessary because when we were doing the low carb and fasting and all that stuff, our body fat percentages had been under 10% for years doing that stuff.
Under 8%.
Yeah. Which was
like 6-7%.
Yeah. When we had the veins all up I remember like just having veins all up on my belly and it's being like extremely lean and not feeling good, feeling good. So like that 20 pounds of weight gain or more that we had put on was like needed. Now, definitely overshot because the calories, like I remember it was like 30 pounds in like 2 months.
Yeah, from that low from the point where you were seeing abs on your veins, I think it was up, 45 pounds from there, or 40 pounds? Like that was a low for sure.
But it was too thin at that point. And I was 6'2", 170 pounds versus moving up to being, 6'2", 220 pounds. 220 was too high, but 200, 190 was like adequate. So there was an overshoot, but I was also, both of us were almost at that level, and we were pounding, ridiculous numbers of calories in that refeeding phase. It's not that we were low calorie eating before, it's that we were exercising and then low carb eating, which was a bad combination, especially with how much exercise with the powerlifting and bodybuilding and gymnastics training all together, and then trying to do sprints and yoga and whatever else. It was like an absurd amount of activity.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, we were biking everywhere. Like we didn't have cars and we lived off campus. So we were biking to all of our classes. And when we biked, we biked. It wasn't like a casual bike. Like we were
high intensity biking.
Yeah, normally because we were pretty late for our classes, or because we forgot plantains in the oven and had to bike back really quickly.
I wonder who did that.
Yeah, me too.